Hey, Patrick.
Hey, Michael J.
So I just woke up one day and there was like 100 preview cards for the next set.
Yeah, I think actually only 75 of them are official right now.
Yeah.
But once you count the 25 basic land, like all the different, artworks for the basic land or whatever, I think it's just about 100 exactly.
Yeah, well, I woke up and they're like, not only is there, I don't know, a new Jace spoiled, but you can have as many Jaces as you want and play now. You can have three of the same Jace now.
I mean, all kinds of weird, all kinds of stuff is different now. It's been a hell of a week. And we might as well start with looking at the change to the Planeswalker rules and the new Jace specifically. So for those, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so the flashy new Jace is Jace Cunning Castaway, which is a legendary Planeswalker Jace. So that's where we're seeing the kind of the text box change on the Planeswalker template. Planeswalkers are now legendary, right? So before, Planeswalkers had a uniqueness factor associated with their name. There's just one, like, you could only have one Jace, whether it was an Unraveler of Secrets or a Mind Sculptor or whatever in play. Now you can have any number of Jaces as long as they're different cards. Is that the way it is?
Yeah, it's just like other legends. Like if you have Rishgar, Pima, Renegade. Basically, if you just pick two different Crovaxes and they're both fine, or two different Balthors,
or two different Niv Mizzets, perhaps, if we were in the market for a Draco Genius,
right? Or two. It's just now they're like other legends, and so you could have a Jace the Mind Sculptor and a Jace Balerion.
Yeah, on one hand, I kind of love this rule because it actually makes a lot of sense and actually makes it simpler and actually, I think, more interesting and more elegant in the long term in terms of gameplay. But I kind of also will always miss like the Planeswalker subgames that we used to play. Remember, just
but those are already gone.
I know, but I
this
love
isn't
them.
that. This isn't that. What this is now making it so that, like, for instance, 4 doesn't make it so that people don't play Gideon 3 as much.
Yeah, I think that is a big game. It actually helps Gideon a lot, right?
Particularly Gideon 3.
Yeah, like Gideon 3, that guy has a hell of an ability, but was limited by the fact that you could only have one Gideon and body in play. Now that there's the Planeswalker Uniqueness rule has changed to the Legendary rule, you could theoretically have like 4 or 5 Gideons in play, which would protect your emblem.
Or more if you have Mirror Gallery.
Sure. So, you want to go over the text of your favorite Planeswalker?
So Jace the Mind Sculptor from Whirlwake was a card that was 2 blue... Oh, you mean the new Jace?
Oh, I meant by character, not by specific cardboard. It actually, so this Jace, he's a pirate now, right? Like, he went from a wizard to a
classic
pirate?
Classic heel turn.
Like, he's got a torn bodice. He could be on the other side of kissing a vampire on the cover of a romance novel now.
Yeah. He's also got slightly merfolk sort of influences in some of his stylistic choices. I think that this particular Jace is this is like flashback Jace back in the day almost, but not really, because I think that this is just...
Well, the story's moving forward, but I guess he's gotten a little more ripped in the Gatewatch, right? Like he's got a little pec showing. Because I think of Jace like, you don't know what's going on underneath that cloak because he's a wizard, right? He doesn't have to be physically strong.
Well,
he's not Gideon.
I do. I know what's going on under that cloak.
Well, now everybody knows what's going on under the cloak.
So Jace is Jace Cunning Castaway. 1 blue, a historically good casting cost. 1 blue
for a Planeswalker.
And by the way, all of the old Planeswalkers are errated to be legendary also, which is going to change a lot of functionality of cards. Like, for instance, if something can be used to go get legendary permanents or that cares about how many legends or anything like that, like lots of cards have different values because of that. So anyway, Jace Cunning Castaway, 1 blue, Planeswalker with 3 loyalty. When 1 or more creatures you control... This is his +1 ability. And he starts with 3 loyalty, obviously. But +1, when one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player this turn, draw a card and then discard a card. So, like, right off the top, his +1 ability is letting you loot as long as you can hit your opponent with some creatures.
Well,
and it's only loot one time.
Yeah, no matter how many creatures you hit him with. So it's
right.
This isn't even a pure card advantage kind of draw ability like or the original Jace Beleren might give you. And so I think that folks
Well, I mean, Jace Beleren's plus wasn't a pure card draw.
Oh, no. Well, no, it didn't. It often felt that way, but it wasn't it wasn't a pure card draw, you're right. But kind of the counterbalance on this ability is his -2, which is to create a 2/2 blue illusion creature token with when this creature becomes the target of a spell, sacrifice it. So Jace can, worst case scenario, he can start off with 3 loyalty, go down to 1 loyalty with the -2, theoretically protect himself with a 2/2 body, but he provides you a body to attack with for the +1 in a following turn.
Right. And if you plus, though, there's a little bit more value in that you're very close to just about one of the fastest Planeswalker Ultimate activations ever. I mean, this is, it's not as fast as Gideon 4 with his 0, but I mean, this is just at -5, which means you only have to tick him up twice. -5, create 2 tokens that are copies of Jace, Cunning Castaway, except they're not legendary. Now, it's important to note that you might as well -5 this Jace when you're at 5. Because when you use Jace's ability, it will legend rule the original copy.
Ah. Even though the others aren't legendary, the first one is legendary.
Right.
Now, important to note.
Yes, important to note. Now, here's, here's a Planeswalker that plays a little bit differently than a lot of Planeswalkers. To begin with, this -2 ability, unlike other Skulking Ghosts, this -2 ability actually plays with the +1 ability in a variety of ways. First, to start with, obviously, the +1 ability is AoE. It's when any of your creatures hit. It doesn't require a specific one. But second of all, this -2 ability, the 2/2 illusion that you're making, it's only when it's the target of a spell do you sacrifice it. So this is not going to get stopped by some icy manipulator type effect.
So, Patrick, is there some tactical implications to the +1? So, for example, can you just drop a guy on turn 2, swing with it, your opponent has the choice to, maybe trade or not, maybe he lets it in, and then post-combat you hit Jace into a +1, or do you need to have the Jace for the +1 while the creature's in play?
You need to have the Jace, and you need to use the +1. You just need to have Jace's +1 having already been activated when the creatures actually deal the damage.
So there's no backwards tricksy here.
Well, I mean, you could play a Jace +1 him and then play a haste creature. That would work. But that's not really backwards the same way. I mean, the haste creature could see backwards. Now, there is combos with Double Strike. If you have Jace, Cunning Castaway, and a Double Strike creature, you do get to loot twice. Which is at least something, there's a couple Double Strikers.
Oh, I mean, there's some big Double Strikers in this set. I don't know if very many of them are going to come down before Jace.
I think Needle Spire is also it's no longer legal in Standard, but it does sort of open the door to the possibility of some other, who knows what they'll make in this set. It opens the door to some possible other way to get a Double Strike creature. There's always the Double Strike creatures just straight up. But sometimes when you get them at a relatively low opportunity cost, they end up comboing sort of better sideways with these Planeswalkers with niche abilities.
What if we were talking about... isn't there a creature that's white and 1 for 2 mana. That's a 1/1 that has double strike that will be legal at the same time. That might work, right?
Sure. I mean, any double striker,
that
yeah.
kind of fencing ace kind of creature that was in the previous set.
Yep. And then obviously there's like that 2/2 that has revolt of +1/+1 each turn. So Jace has some other kind of notable, I guess, aspects to him that I would like to call out first. And this one maybe is fringe, but it just seems so wacky. It just might be, well, I'll just tell you, doubling season with Jace. So if you have doubling season and you play Jace Cunning Castaway, Jace Cunning Castaway comes into play with 6 loyalty counters. You can immediately -5 Jace and make 2 more Jaces.
Each of which would come into play with 6?
6. And then each of those you can -5, so that now you have 4 Jaces. And you can just make as many Jaces as you want, which means you can also make as many 2/2 blue illusions as you want. So you can just end up with 1,000,000 Jaces, or you can end up with, like, I don't know what the exact number is, but something like, call it 2 million Jaces and 1 million 2/2 illusions.
Oh, I kind of really like that. Is doubling season legal in Modern?
No.
Oh. Well, this seems a little slow for formats bigger than Modern. But man, is it a good idea?
But you never know. I mean, there's other stuff you might do, like Oath of Gideon and who knows what else.
Like, Oath of Gideon is, first of all, isn't that going to rotate? Is that one of them?
I thought you were talking about Modern.
Oh, look, Patrick, one of them is a 2-card combo that makes 1 billion power. One of them is a 2-card combo that starts your Planeswalker on 4 loyalty. Like, these are not like events. Like, 1 billion 4.
So, what do you think about this card, man? Looting means something different now that all the Madness cards are rotating out.
Yeah, my gut is I'm not excited, and my brain is like, I don't know, Jaces have a pretty good track record. He costs 3, he makes a body, he's a very fast ultimate. Maybe don't pass judgment on the. I'm not super excited about the +1. I think is the gut that I have on this, but I think you just for me anyway. I just have to imagine putting it into a different deck than I typically put Jaces into, and I think that's my blocker. Like, if this creature were like a Johnny Cunning Castaway and it was white 1, I probably would be like, oh, this is an amazing card, right? Just because it says Jace and it's UU1 that. I'm not excited about it from the get-go.
So what do you think about Jace in some kind of a Champion of Wits deck?
I was thinking about Jace with Merfolk, but I mean, Champion of Wits is the same. He's just a creature that gets some value and has some additional text and is blue. I think
and they're both looting, and they both let you get to loot away stuff that, like, for instance, if Elder Deep Fiend and all those other types of cards are rotating out, we're going to be looking for some other powerful cards to combine with Champion of Wits. Like maybe I don't know, like Honored Hydra or something. Like, Jace could be in some kind of a Noose Constrictor Honored Hydra deck, right?
Oh, I could see that.
Except Noose Constrictor.
Well, not Noose Constrictor, but Honored Hydra, and I think that there's an incentive to playing blue and green together coming from Ixalan.
And then I just think that the -2 just looks like it might actually be decent. It's going to end up – how good this Jace is, I think, is going to end up just being really a function of what kind of synergies are available with, like that looting, and what does the mana curve look like of whatever synergies would be involved, and then what is the texture of the removal people are playing with. Like, for instance, Twin Bolts – just messes Jace's stuff up, right? 1 to the illusion, 1 to Jace. Done.
Imagine they reprinted Forked Bolt, right? Like, it's a disaster.
Right, so there's going to be plenty of things that are good against Jace. The question is going to be what kind of removal are people playing, and what kind of synergies are there for Jace, and what kind of 3-drop competition is there.
But if the removal is like a braid, trading a braid for half of Jace isn't so bad of a trade at all.
No, Jace is getting the better of that one.
Yeah, it's not so bad at all.
No.
I mean, Earthshaker Kendra's going to finish off Jace in this situation, but still, might have done it anyway.
Well, I mean, like, it ends up depending. I mean, I think you're going to have some way to defend yourself. I don't know that the turn 3 Jace is just the way that you want to stop the Earthshaker Kenra deck. But who knows?
When you figure out how to stop the Earthshaker Kenra deck, tell the rest of us. Like, it'll be a treat.
So, what do you think of the, actually speaking of Earthshaker Kenra, the new 2-power haste creature, Captain Lannery Storm, which is 2 and a red for a 2/2 haste, legendary human pirate. When Captain Lannery Storm attacks, create a colorless treasure artifact token with tap and sacrifice this artifact. Add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. And whenever you sacrifice a treasure, Captain Lannery Storm gets +1/+0 until end of turn.
I think this card is pretty... It's got a lot of stuff going on, right? So let's start with the casting cost versus power and toughness plus haste. 2/2 haste for 3. If we just abstract it there, it's probably not good enough.
No, but it's a 3/2.
Kind of, right? So
no, automatic.
Oh no, you have to sacrifice your treasure,
right?
But you wouldn't necessarily do that. There's a lot of incentives keeping your treasure around.
Well, no. But we didn't get to that part. I'm saying, at a worst case scenario, you could just sacrifice the treasure in combat. Now you have the option to not sacrifice it and to keep it around.
Yeah.
But at a baseline, she's a 3/2 haste. I mean, she's not a 3/2 haste on defense necessarily, but she always can just hit as a 3/2 out the gate.
I mean, you could just stockpile treasures and not attack with Captain Lannery Storm, and then can't you just... Also, you don't have to use Captain Lannery Storm's treasures. If you have other treasures, that would work too, right?
Right, but it's still a 3/2 with upside. It can be even more than a 3/2.
So, to begin with, you're saying Captain Lannery Storm is comparable, possibly favorably comparable to On-Crop Crasher, right? Just in terms of being a 3/2 on the attack.
If you're not counting the exert ability.
Yeah, but the exert ability on On-Crop Crasher is, it's every other. It's not. This is different. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff going on with this card, right? So I was actually going to start by saying, let's compare it to something along the lines of like a Sugata Lancer, right? It was a pretty good card in its era, but it's -1/-1 ability. I think I was going to compare that to the treasure sacrificing ability here, but I think that there's some substantial upside because of the ability to stockpile treasures. Either you have treasures that you already had, or treasures you can get in the future, or you just don't sacrifice the treasures. And so the Captain Lannery Storm could attack for 10 or something later in the game, or a future Captain Lannery Storm could. So, like, let's say you attack with Captain Lannery Storm, make a treasure, it's going to die in combat. You don't sacrifice the treasure, you just trade or whatever. You get some treasures, then later in the game, you draw another Captain Lannery Storm, right? And then that one can just utilize treasures that are already sitting there to make a big attack. Or the other thing, which is, I think, a really novel way of playing the card, you can go, like, turn 3 Captain Lannery Storm, attack, make a treasure, get in for 2, whatever, play your 4th land, and then the next turn, you can actually use the treasure to cast a 5-drop, right?
Or a 6-drop if you attack with Captain Lannery Storm first.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Right, so the treasures can sacrifice for any color, right? So you could do something super crazy, right? You're like, mountain, Captain Lannery Storm, attack, ramming up ruins, right? Sacrifice for G-White and make like some kind of crazy G-White dinosaur, right? Like what? The treasures both accelerate and fix. And so I think that this card is extraordinarily layered. And it's also a pretty good offensive card, I think.
So I mean, there's going to be times where okay. So I agree with your assessment that it's a pretty layered card. There's a lot to unpack with this card, and there's going to be a lot of different tactics that are going to come into play. But I'm not sure that the stacking up all the treasures so that you can like eventually pick your spot and hit for 5 or 6 or 7. I don't think that's that much of the power. I think a lot of the power is going to come from I attack with Captain Lannery Storm. In combat, I'll cast Magma Spray.
Oh, that could do it.
Or Shock. Or whatever, right?
That's
like
awesome.
Like
that's awesome on turn 3. Fantastic.
Right. Or even if it's turn 4 and you cast an Abrade in combat before blockers are declared.
Or I mean, the other thing
that's just so good.
Getting random mana actually helps you to, especially if you have a lot of cheap cards, just helps you to empty your hand, for a certain forecasting cost god. I was actually just thinking you attack with Captain Lannery Storm on turn 3, whether she lives or dies, or I don't know, he lives or dies. But then you're just at bringer mana on turn 4, right? Like, I think that maybe completely changes the paradigm of which red haste creatures we play main deck. Like, it's just different now. Like, people bring two Glory Bringers in the sideboard or something right now. Like, maybe we're going to go to 2 Glory Bringers in the main deck. Maybe we'll play 4 Glory Bringers in the main deck. Because treasures just give us this completely different dimension that red haste aggro decks didn't have before Ixalan.
And the fact that Captain Lannery Storm ramps you straight to 6 on turn 4 if she somehow lives. But I mean, that's part of it. But I think that there's just so much implied power out the gate that it's really a lot of the cards' power that first mana you get. Because if you can leverage that first mana to try to make it so that Captain Lannery Storm will hit or keep hitting in the future, that leads to some very snowballing advantages. And I also think that the color fixing is a big deal for some of the pirate, not just pirate synergies, but also just mana in general, which is going to be a lot worse with the rotation of so much of the mana fixing.
Yeah, we're getting sweet dual lands back, though. I think that
we are, but not as many as we're losing. Remember,
I mean, strictly speaking, I agree with you, but people weren't playing all those dual lands at the same time, right? Like it's not like a deck was losing, even if it had access to 12 dual lands, they weren't really losing 8; they're only losing 4, because like you look like a blue-white deck doesn't play all 3 in color dual lands and Aether Hubs, right? They're more likely to play like
some people do.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. The last Grand Prix I played in, I played black-red.
You played black-red-blue.
I'm just saying that a lot of decks use some dual lands, and it's kind of nice having something to replace because not all dual lands are equal. And decks that before had Needle Spire or Wandering Fumarole, at the moment, there isn't exactly a clean Wandering Fumarole replacement.
Oh, sure. Opposite color dual lands are that's a very different universe.
But that's what I mean. Is the Captain Lannery Storm is a crucial piece of mana fixing. Could be a crucial piece of mana fixing if you want to use her in some kind of a red-white or red-blue or even Jeskai deck. Another thing is, though, the artifacts are triggering stuff. This is artifacts being played. This is artifacts being sacrificed. This is potentially a piece to interact with other Kaladesh era cards that key off such things.
Sure.
And then finally, she's a pirate.
Arr, she is a pirate.
I mean, there's already a bunch of pirate synergies.
Oh yeah, there absolutely are.
Yeah, for sure.
It's all kinds of stuff. It's just like cards get cheaper, draw cards,
Not the least of which is Unclaimed Territory, which is a land that's the new Cavernous Souls. As basically, it's exactly Cavernous Souls, but without the uncounterability part. So as it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. You can tap to get a colorless, and you can tap it to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool that can only be spent to cast a creature of that type.
and we're going to name Pirate.
You can. You know, she's also a human. Human's a good name, too.
Sure.
You know? And I think it's good that they actually made some orc pirates and so on so that you actually want to name Pirate. But,
I mean, if you want to talk about orc pirates, though, right? So, let's just... Can we talk about Dire... Huh? Dire Fleet Captain for a second.
I'm allergic to mediocre technology. Please continue. What were you saying?
Dire Fleet Captain, right? This card seems pretty good.
Black and a red for a 2/2 orc pirate.
Yeah. It's an orc. It's a pirate. It costs 2. I was thinking... And it is... When Dire Fleet Captain attacks, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each other attacking pirate. You can go turn 2, Dire Fleet Captain, turn 3, Captain Lannery Storm, attack with both, right? Dire Fleet Captain's going to go to 3/3. Captain Lannery Storm's potentially 3/2 on this attack. That's like 6 power attacking on turn 3. That doesn't seem mediocre to me. You know, especially...
Mediocre.
Excuse me?
No, that sounds pretty sweet.
Yeah, like... Also, we're going to still push, right? We can still push. Pushing isn't rotating, right?
No, so, it's easy to push off the pedal, and it's a great combo. That's a great call. You
can have pushes and whatever kind of 1-mana red spells you want to play, you know, whether it's sprays, shocks, whatever happens to be legal at the time. I think there's going to be a push, fatal or otherwise, towards 1 casting cost removal in black-red just because of the synergies you talked about, right? Treasures are great for that.
Sure. I mean, that seems great. I mean, Fatal Push is also just an amazing card to begin with, but...
Yeah, so I think that the Orc Pirates and Human Pirates are going to raid together. Going to be happy as... Well, maybe not clams, because they got raided, and, you know, their territory was claimed, and... all.
So, another pirate in the mix is Fathom Fleet Captain. 1 and a black for a 2/1 menace. And when Fathom Fleet Captain attacks, if you control another non-token pirate, you may pay 2. If you do, create a 2/2 black pirate creature token with menace.
This card seems like a powerhouse to me.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
So, first of all, just a 2/1 menace for 2. Maybe you wouldn't pick that card, right? But you're like, oh, it's a pirate.
It's comparable to Glint Sleeve Siphoner.
Yeah, but, you know, it's a pirate. It's like, oh, maybe I'm take a second look at this thing. But you don't actually have to attack with any other pirate, right? So you could just have another pirate and attack with Fathom Fleet Captain, and that fulfills the condition, right? So, you know, this guy has evasion, so it's a little hard to kill him in combat. And then, you know, you just start putting together bodies that are, like, better than him. He's like a one-man army. Yeah.
I mean, it's sort of like a Glint Sleeve Siphoner that instead of drawing you... Okay, you know, setting aside if you have any energy synergies, which you usually do, but setting aside that, Glint Sleeve Siphoners basically, every 2 turns, you can pay 2 life to draw... every 2 turns, you can pay a life to draw a card. Well, with Fathom Fleet Captain, the card you're drawing is a 2/2 menace for 2. But you can do it every turn, but you have to pay for it, and your thing has to be that pirate right now. So, you know, this card seems pretty sweet to me.
I think it's very good. I think, like, a 2/2 menace for 2, even if that was just a card, like, it's not something that you would disregard out of hand if it's you know, it's a pirate also, right? So it has potential pirate synergies, but you know, maybe it's not the best card in the world, but you wouldn't say, oh, I'm definitely not going to play this. But when it's free, it doesn't cost you a card in hand or a card in your library, you know, a card in your 60 or 75. All of a sudden, it's looking.
Well, it's not free. It still costs you 2 stock mana.
Yeah, it costs you mana, but it doesn't cost. It doesn't cost you, you know, cardboard resources. Yeah. And I think that's pretty compelling.
Yeah, no, this card looks pretty sweet. Gotta see what the texture of the removal is. There are a lot of cards in this set that make twin bolts type of cards look decent. But speaking of things that are good to twin bolt, what do you think of Deadeye Tracker, which is black for a 1/1? You can pay You can pay a colorless a black and tap it and exile. I'm sorry. You can pay a colorless a black and tap it to exile 2 target cards from an opponent's graveyard. Deadeye Tracker explores. Now, exploring is kind of an interesting take on the Sinbad mechanic of sorts, who was a pirate. So this one is, so when you explore, you reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land, you put it in your hand. If it's not a land, you put a +1/+1 counter on whoever did the exploring, and then you can put the card back on top, or you can put it into your graveyard. So it's kind of like Clashing meets Sinbad with like a little bit of +1/+1 counter action.
So what I want to do is I want to actually pause on Deadeye Tracker, jump to another Explore creature, and then jump back to Deadeye Tracker, if we can do that.
Sure.
All right, so I would like to jump to the green Explore creature. What's his name? Costs 3 mana. Where are you? Tishana's Wayfinder. Tishana's Wayfinder is 2 and a G for a 2/2 creature. When Tishana's Wayfinder enters the battlefield, it explores. Same ability. Reveal the top card of your library. Put that card into your hand if it's a land. Otherwise, it's a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Then put the card back on top or into your graveyard. Right. So Tishana's Wayfinder is like half Gnarled Mass, half Borderland Ranger.
And when it's a Gnarled Mass, though, it's a Gnarled Mass that has Scry 1.
Yeah. So this is just like, while underpowered, this is like the perfect Michael J card. It's all my favorite 3 cast green cards in one, but you never know which one you're going to get.
No, this one is this. I think you're exactly right. Like it's Borderland Ranger meets Gnarled Mass and Unreliable.
Yeah, it's all the things I should never have loved, right? So now going back to the 1 casting cost version, I think Deadeye Tracker is potentially very powerful. It's got a weird condition, right? You have to exile 2 target cards from your opponent's graveyard. So if they don't have 2 cards in their graveyard, you can't do the explorability. But
right?
But it's a powerful. This is an instant speed ability, right? If you have a Tishana's Wanderer, rather a Deadeye Tracker in play, you can put pressure on the opponent's graveyard just by leaving 2 mana open. So this has potential.
It's got a bit of Deathrite Shaman action.
Yeah, it's got some implications long term, and it's actually kind of multiply Deathrite Shaman-ish, right? Like it kind of gets you mana, like a Deathrite Shaman. It kind of gets you damage in the form of future power and attacking from the other side of the Explore. I think this card should be powerful because, like, even if you're like not fighting against graveyard synergies and you're just you sometimes, because you have nothing better to do, you could just be hitting your own graveyard. You've got the Scry 1, which is pretty cool, and then
you can't. No. You can't hit your own graveyard. It's only your opponent's.
Shoot. All right. Well, you can still hit the opponent's graveyard, and it's a potential card advantage engine or a potential selection engine, and the cost is pretty low at only 1 mana. So I think this card is pretty cool.
Cool, sure, absolutely. It's confusing at the moment how much, like, where the power really is, because if you're drawing a card that's just black for a 1/1, tap and pay a colorless and a black, exile 2 cards from an opponent's graveyard to draw a card, that would be kind of like a Grim Lavamancer, except you're going to your opponent's graveyard instead of your own, and you're spending 1 extra to get a card instead of a shock. Now, Grim Lavamancer is a very powerful card, so it's not clear that should be the bar. But I'm not 100% sure that even just drawing the card outright is that pushy of an effect. And then it only draws the card 40% of the time. The other 60% of the time, you get a +1/+1 counter on Deadeye Tracker and a Scry. And it's tricky because you only get the Scry in times where you have a spell on top, which makes Deadeye Tracker good for helping find mana. But if you're looking for, if you're just like, I just want as much action as possible.
Oh, Patrick, I'm going to have to disagree with you a little bit.
Wait, I haven't even made a position yet. I'm just saying facts. Oh, yeah. So if you're just looking for action, it gives you your choice of selection of action, but it's not giving you quantity the same way. It improves the chances of you drawing action because you got that Courser of Krufix action going, but you're not drawing 2 spells in the same turn. You're just drawing a spell every turn more often. And then the +1/+1 counter thing is actually kind of tricky because as the +1/+1 counters stack up on Deadeye Tracker, the opportunity cost starts becoming higher and higher and higher to use this ability more. So I think this card could be, obviously this card does so many different things that it's got a lot of ability to influence the game, and it's going to come down to how much does it matter that it's a human and a pirate? How much does the graveyard hate matter? How much does it being a 1-drop fulfill a need on your curve? How much does it growing in size end up bringing you value some other way? How much does you knowing the top of your deck matter? If you knowing the top of your deck combines with other cards in this set, that might be fantastic. Or if you have Scry in some way, that might be fantastic. Or it might just be that the pirate tribe just needs some 1-drops. Because this guy does a bunch of stuff.
I think that putting cards into your graveyard might be good. Putting specifically non-land, maybe Gigundo creatures in your graveyard sometimes might be good. So I don't know if this is the best application of this, but I was trying to figure out how to load up for Boneyard Parlay. Boneyard Parlay is the kind of card I'm like, well, do I really want to cast a 7 ever? And it turns out that, with cards like Approach of the Second Sun, you want to cast 7s if they're going to be, really, really powerful and can finish the game. Boneyard Parlay seems like, potentially you just get enough gigantic fat into one or more graveyards, and you're going to get an advantage out of it.
This card, it takes quite the confluence of events to really maximize.
It takes work, and it takes, you have to have the cards, right?
So you get 5 creatures from all graveyards. You split your opponent splits them into 2 piles, and then you get your choice of pile, which means you're always at least getting the best creature in either graveyard.
But you're probably not getting. Yeah, you're probably not going to get the best creature and 3 unless there's 2 copies of the best creature, right?
Right. So you're kind of factor fictioning from among all graveyards for creatures into play.
So this is a very awkward card potentially, but I would say that if your creatures are good enough, an investment in 7 is going to be more than worth the ROI. There's some pretty powerful giant creatures even just in this set.
Yeah, I think, again, it's going to end up coming down to some of the synergies, this type of card is not often good, but this card is a much better version of this type of effect than we normally see. And sometimes those cards can be great. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was thinking, on the order of powerful kind of big black spells, what did you think about Revel in Riches?
Revel in Riches, 4 and a black enchantment. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, create one of those treasures, which are the artifact tokens that you can tap and sacrifice for a mana of any color. I don't know.
That's
this
good,
is right? Revel in Riches?
Yeah. There's another line, Patrick.
At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 10 or more treasures, you win the game.
How about now?
Nah.
No?
No, man. If I just have 10 extra Lotus Petals laying around, then I win the game?
Yeah. You're saying if I have 10 extra Lotus Petals, I should win the game?
Dude, this is a 5-mana enchantment. And if your opponent has creatures, and you're able to kill them and then you start getting the Lotus Petals. And if you don't use the Lotus Petals, you can win the game at the beginning of your upkeep if you have this 5-mana enchantment still in play, along with those 10 Lotus Petals that you didn't use.
Well, I was kind of thinking that there might be enough stuff like Captain Lannery that would give us, a large number of treasures.
I mean, there might be, but there won't be.
Okay.
I mean, we could try it. For sure, obviously going to brew with it, blah, blah, blah. It's not going to work out.
Okay.
It might, it probably won't.
I feel like it might.
Maybe. I mean, anything is possible.
I mean, poison never happened until somebody made poison happen.
Dude, poison happened way back in the day with Serpent Generator. It wasn't good. But man, did it happen. So if we're going to be doing the whole treasures thing, what do you think of that treasure map, which is the 2-colorless artifact flip card? It's a 2-colorless artifact. You can tap it pay a colorless to scry 1, and then you put a landmark counter on treasure map. And then if there are 3 or more landmark counters, remove them and transform treasure map and create 3 colorless treasures. So you put it out for 2, you pay 1 and scry 1 3 times, and then after the 3rd scry, then you have a treasure cove, which is a land. You have a treasure cove, and then you also have 3 treasures. And so the treasure cove is a land that taps for a colorless, and you can also, if you want, you could tap it and sacrifice a treasure to draw a card.
So, just 3 or 4 things about this card. First of all, it's super flavorful, right? So one of the things that they're clearly going for with Ixalan is they're hitting us real hard with Captain Jack Sparrow, Pirates of the Caribbean, and I think that this does a really great job of conveying that that sort of pirate feel, even better than some of the pirate creature cards, right? So I think it would be a mistake to not recognize the amount of flavor that's represented by Treasure Map as a card. Now, that said, from a gameplay perspective, let's assume that you've got something going on other than paying 2 mana and then paying an additional 3 mana to scry 3 times, because you got to be defending yourself while this is going on. But it's interesting in that you can make a short-term investment for a 2 mana artifact and then like minor investments for the next 3 or so turns to scry, but then your payoff on that third turn is a massive amount of acceleration, right? So you turn a mana sink into a mana because the Treasure Cove itself taps for 1, right? And then you also burst by getting the treasures, which is essentially like a Black Lotus warping into play or casting a Dark Ritual, right? You have access immediately to 3 mana. So, kind of pay into the kitty, and then you get a burst of 4 mana on the next turn. And
if you want.
Or you could draw cards with it, right?
So if you play Treasure Map on turn 3, you can immediately scry and put a counter on it. And then on turn 4, you scry again, because obviously you missed on your opponent's end step when you scryed the first time. So you scry in your own upkeep. And then on turn 5, you scry again, and you have access to 8 mana on turn 5. You can just play Nico Bolas with, room to spare. And that's only part of it. If you want, alternatively, you can just start drawing cards.
One of the things I like about this card is rampish type decks often have kind of a conflict between action cards and enabler cards, right? Either getting more mana, like a card like a Rampant Growth or an Explosive Vegetation versus the Giant Eldrazi that you want to cast after you've ramped. Treasure Map is a card that helps you potentially dig to your action card and also helps you cast it, although in kind of a weird order.
I mean, it's also just kind of in time, you're kind of getting a draw for.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, like, it's going to have a bunch of different applications depending on the matchup you're in. Like, if you're playing against a blue-white deck, you're going to get all the value in the world out of a treasure map that resolves on turn 2. If you're playing against a red deck, I think you're just probably desperate to stay alive.
Yeah, I mean, it absorbs an Abrade that was going to hit nothing.
What if
this card looks sweet? This card looks like it's going to be so much fun. Seriously.
I actually think this card is probably going to be really exciting and limited. I mean, it's a rare, but, it'll be exciting and limited.
I can see playing with this in Constructed. It's going to come down to how much artifact destruction there is, because this is a lot of cards. There are a lot of decks that I've played over the years that would play something like this.
Or a lot of mana. It's both. It's either.
And it can, obviously, once you have that treasure cove, you can be sacking whatever treasures you want. So if you're attacking with, like, say, Captain Lannery Storm, you can, like, just keep using that as a source of treasures so that your treasure cove is letting you Howling Mine from here on out.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, I think there's going to be a critical mass of treasures type strategy.
Go ahead.
I just want to pick your brain on 2 removal cards. I think one of them is going to be real easy to assess, and the other one's going to be a little harder to assess.
Oh, a quiz.
All right, so Walk the Plank.
No, you walk the plank.
What's your assessment of Walk the Plank? It's BB for a sorcery. Mm-hmm. Destroy target non-merfolk creature.
So non-merfolk creature, I think, is from the looks of it, I mean, who knows? We'll see how big the merfolk end up being. But I would generally guess that destroy a non-merfolk creature is even less restrictive than Victim of Night. And Victim of Night was great.
Yeah.
But Victim of Night was also an instant. But these are also different times. I mean, I think Walk the Plank is, in particular, benefiting from Grasp of Darkness rotating out. But there's a lot of competition for cheap removal. There's Fatal Push. There's all the shock type stuff, Abrade, Harness Lightning. There's all kinds of different types, and then there's also some that didn't see play before as much, but might see a little bit more, such as like the Trial of Ambition. So there's a variety of different types of removal spells it's competing with, but I think Walk the Plank is going to show up. I think this one, it's going to end up being one of those, the right mix of removal from week to week might change. It's going to be a function of how easy is double black for you, which is not trivial for everybody. But I think this is a solid, removal spell.
I think it's solid too. I can see it being a 4 of in a lot of decks.
I think it's going to be tempting at first, but I think that even though a lot of people at first are going to just be spamming 4 in decks, I think that there's a very good chance it ends up being the type of removal spell that you're actually supposed to play a mix, partly because of whenever you play against a Merfolk deck, but partly in that you're just not going to want to have that much sorcery speed removal at times. I think that you're going to want to have a mixture, because some of the removal spells that cost 3 or more are going to have added flexibility, like never return. Whereas some of the removal spells that cost 2 or less, maybe they won't hit as many creatures, but they'll have other options, whether it's like a Abrade or a Harness Lightning or whatever.
So I thought that one was fairly easy to assess. I think this one's harder to assess, but I think it's sweet. Burning Sun's Avatar. 3 RRR for a 6/6 dinosaur avatar. So we've talked a lot about pirates, but there's pirates and merfolk and dinosaurs in this set. It's a dinosaur avatar, 6/6 for 6, and it has, when Burning Sun's Avatar enters the battlefield, it deals 3 damage to target opponent and 3 damage to up to 1 target creature.
Yeah, so it's sort of an Inferno Titan. But it doesn't Arc Lightning them. It just Incendiary Flows one of them, or basically 3 to 1 of them. But the upside is that instead of getting Fire Breathing or the ability to Arc Lightning whenever you attack, you get to do 3 to the face and 3 to 1 creature. Now, I don't think Inferno Titan should be the bar, but by any reasonable metric, this card is not in the zip code of Inferno Titan.
Yeah, I agree. It's harder to cast, right? Yeah. And if you attack more than one time, it's behind Inferno Titan. But it's 187. You know, if you just look at the window of that 6 mana turn, it's better than Inferno Titan that turn, right? And then it gets...
Sort of. It doesn't arc lightning, though.
It's right? It's 3 to an opponent.
Yeah, I know, but it can't kill 3. It doesn't kill 3 elves.
Oh, yes, that's true. It does not kill 3 elves. It kill like 1/3/3 creature and brain the opponent for 3. That's why I thought it's a little harder to assess. And it's not hard to assess Inferno Titan.
A lot of people assessed it wrong out the gate.
I was a fan. I know you were a fan.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think that Burning Sun's Avatar seems like, again, it's one of those, what are the other 5s and 6s that are going on? What is the ramping? What are the size of the creatures that you might potentially be looking to kill? If everybody's playing, Winding Constrictor and stuff, this starts becoming more appealing. And if a lot of people have 3, Planeswalkers that this is actually putting pressure on, that's sweet. I think this one's just too hard to know for sure until you have more of the context, because it's got a decent rate, but it's the exact type of card that it might be an automatic 4 of, where everybody's like, oh my god, this is so insane, I can't believe this card is legal, if the format is such that these numbers line up right. Or it might be the type of card that it's like, no, this is just too slow, why would you play this? You're going to play this instead of Torrential Gearhulk?
Yeah, so I was thinking a similar thing, Patrick, which is that it's a substantial investment, right, at 6 mana. But I had like a little bit of a different ultimate take on it, which I felt it was kind of like a Searing Spear, which is like, Searing Spear is not an impressive card in and of itself. It's just like a pretty okay card. But in Standard, when decks had a lot of Searing Spears, like especially like a blue-red deck or a blue-red-white deck, you would draw multiple or get effectively multiple by playing with cards like Snapcaster Mage, then the 3 damage would snowball and snowball, and then all of a sudden Searing Spear became so deadly. It was just like, oh my god, not Searing Spear, versus like, oh, a Searing Spear. So I think that Burning Sun's Avatar, it feels that way, in that if you get to the point, obviously, that you can play one, if you start to be able to play more than one, then I think it could be very, very powerful. That's in a way that's different than a lot of the other high casting cost cards. But maybe that's wrong, right? Maybe if you play that many Combustible Gearhulks, it would be even more impressive. But I don't know, it felt like there was some kind of snowball effect associatable with those 3 mana pings, 3 damage pings rather.
Yeah, but I mean, at the end of the day, so much of the power is bundled up in the ability to hit creatures that it's going to really depend on what are the size of the creatures out there. How much value is there to being able to send 3 upstairs in terms of hitting Planeswalkers and in terms of stacking with your other direct damage? How much does the removal that other people play line up well against Burning Sun's Avatar or not? And what is the competition for other expensive cards? Or the incentive to play expensive cards? Like, for instance, I'm much more excited about Rowdy Crew.
Ooh, Rowdy Crew.
Yeah, this is, oh my god, this here is a Balduvian Horde after my own heart.
That was literally the card I was thinking of. So I think it just belies our age.
Rowdy Crew is 2 red for a 3/3 trample. When Rowdy Crew, which is a pirate, a human pirate, when Rowdy Crew enters the battlefield, draw 3 cards, then discard 2 at random. If the 2 cards share... If 2 cards that share a type are discarded this way, put 2 +1/+1 counters on Rowdy Crew.
Right, so Rowdy Crew, worst case scenario, is a 3/3 trample for 4 that made your hand worse. Right? Like that's possible.
No, that's not the worst case scenario.
It's not?
So the worst case scenario, practically speaking, is a 3/3 trampler that nets you a card. Because it's draw 3 and then discard 2 at random.
All right. So...
Right? Like, draw 3, discard 2 at random you're still netting a card. And that's
Okay.
to say nothing of the ability to change the quality of your hand. Because you can choose when to play Rowdy Crew or not. And so, like, the worse your hand is, like, the more of your cards in your hand that you want to keep, the more likely it is that you would play them instead of Rowdy Crew. And the more likely it is that you have cards in your hand, like, the more cards you have in your hand that you don't want, you can just keep them in your hand and increase the probability of Rowdy Crewing.
So, for sake of argument, if you play
It's plus one card.
If you play Rowdy Crew with no cards in hand, you're always ending up better than you were before.
Sort of, yeah. Basically, I mean, you're milling some cards, but that's typically upside more than
a deal, yeah.
Well, it's upside more than it's downside. I mean, if you're milling anything with graveyard synergies, if you have anything that has discard synergies, like all those cards that, like the Flame Blade Adept, where it gets +1 for every card that you discard. Well, with Rowdy Crew, you discard 2 cards.
Oh, I hadn't even thought about that. There's like some Drakehaven implications.
Yeah, there's a variety. Okay. Yeah. So when Rowdy Crew is just being used straight up, it's a 3/3 trampler that has better than draw a card, which is already like something. And then it's also a human pirate, so those are some types that can matter. And then what's more, if the cards you discard match, now it's a 5/5 trampler, but instead of, where Balduvian Horde made you discard a card, this one netted you a card. Plus it has trample.
I can see why you would be pretty excited by it. This is a good fatty for 4.
Dude, this card looks great.
Do you think this card will compete with Hazoret or just be played in different decks?
Well, at the very least, it's competing, but it's not as inherently powerful as Hazoret it's just a straightforward, all pedal to the metal burn strategy sort of goes. But I think that Rowdy Crew could be better for certain types of attrition battles. And I think that its tribal type, it's well suited to, interacting with a lot of the other pirate cards.
I have one more pirate I want to talk about before we break for the night. Daring Saboteur. 1 and a blue for a 2/1 human pirate. So we talked about a lot of red pirates. Back to a blue pirate here. When Daring Saboteur deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. And it also, return to you, Daring Pirate can't be blocked this turn. I didn't like this card, but I think it's pretty sweet after I thought about it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that just having a 2/1 that if it hits some loots, that's already something. And the fact that it can become unblockable goes a long way towards making up for, for instance, if you compare it to Ilkor Looter or whatever it was, right? Like the Ilkor Looter having Shadow was kind of nice for making sure you could just loot every turn and get your 1 damage in. During Saboteur, you have to actually pay 3, but it has the upside of hitting twice as hard, plus it can actually do damage, and you don't actually have to pay the mana if your opponent doesn't have a blocker.
The other thing is, very late in the game, the 3 might not be that significant, but the damage might be very significant.
Yeah. Yeah, this card seems decent.
I think a good curve card, too. I think it might be a good card to lay down before you run your Jace out in turn 3.
As far as the pirates go, it does look like there's a variety of decent options at 2, but it's going to end up depending on which colors you're playing. There's the pirates obviously appear in all 3 Grixis colors, but I don't think this card is exclusively the domain of pirates, though.
I agree.
But there is a different pirate. Just quickly, the 7-cost one, or I'm sorry, not 7, 5-cost one, Direfleet Ravager, 3 black. For a 4/4 Menace Death Touch. When it enters the battlefield, each player loses a third of his or her life rounded up. What's your verdict?
I hadn't seen that one before. So I haven't put a lot of thought into it. It seems like it could kill people pretty bad. And It has a good combination of abilities even without considering that one.
It's kind of nice with if you're playing some sort of a strategy that early on is sort of doing a little bit more establishing. Like if you're kind of defending yourself early and then switching gears, if you play Direfleet Ravager when you haven't even hit your opponent yet, you get to dome them for 7 out the gate. That's not trivial.
Well, I mean, just like a Menace Death Touch 4/4 for 5. Obviously the investment of 5 is the least attractive part of that equation. But a 4/4 Menace Death Touch, once it's already in play, it's certainly something that a lot of decks would want to have, right? And if you dome somebody for, call it 7, to begin with, it doesn't take too many additional hits from a 4/4 with evasion to finish them off.
No. Yeah, I think this one actually, it's kind of a cute card. I would not be surprised if it's not as much of a pirate thing as it is just a 5-cost, happens to work synergistically with some strategy outside of the pirate tribe.
So if you get 3 Direfleet Ravagers in play all at the same time somehow, right? Like, I don't know, Living Death. The
first one puts them to 13, then the second one puts them to 8, then the third one puts them to 5.
Oh, okay. So you can't just kill everybody in one move.
Well, you can if people are at, like, say, 5.
Okay.
Or 4, I guess.
I was just wondering for the wider world, but sounds like you have to play a little fairer than that. There's going to be plenty to talk about for many weeks, I think. This set it feels like just a 90-degree angle from what we've been doing from the previous sets, right? Like, first of all, I have loved playing Standard since Hour of Devastation came out. I haven't enjoyed playing Standard this much in, I think, over a year, and I'm actually kind of sad that the rotation is impending because I've enjoyed the format so much. But it looks like there's some cool interactions that might happen. I don't know if this makes sense to you, but this feels like Time Spiral-ish cards to me. That's the aesthetic I'm getting from this. Do you have any kind of memories about what kind of set this feels like?
Do I have memories of what this set feels like?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, just like it feels like, which kind of cards or anything like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I don't yet, but I am looking forward to the change. Like there's a lot of some of the stuff that looks like is being cared about in here looks kind of promising so far, and I think it's going to end up really the rest of the commons and uncommons that they start to show, and then the other half of the rares and mythics. I think it's very promising, partly just because of the amount of new and different stuff and remixing of different stuff that's going to be available, but partly in that this is the first time in a long time we've rotated cards.
And so many at once.
Oh yeah, this is the first time in a while we've rotated this many cards. So I think that the rules of engagement are going to be completely different than they were, and that's exciting.
Last thing, of the 70 or so cards that we've seen so far from Ixalan, which ones have you got your eye on, or your favorite so far?
I don't know. I mean, there's just so many all at once that it's hard to process which one would be my favorite or have the most, right out the gate. I don't know. There's a lot of pieces. There's a lot of connections to try to put together so far. What about you?
I think I'd have to say Captain Lannery Storm. It's layered. I think I'm more excited about the ramp implications than I am from the damage implications, but the damage implications are not 0.
I might be in for Queen's Bay Soldier.
But which one is that?
It's 1 and a black for a 2/2 vampire soldier.
That's it?
That's it.
I mean, you can't even get like a Bloodcrazed Paladin out of you? Like, what's... No wonder I didn't know what it was.
Next week.
Next week it is. All right. Before next week, just like to thank everybody for tuning in and listening again. It's all you out there that make it so fun for us to record top-level podcasts every week.
So, oh, yeah.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks to people who follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, and on Patreon this week in particular. Thank you to Daniel Magyar from Patreon.
Thanks, Daniel. Thank you for helping us bring the show to everybody every week. It's a total blast.
We are Top of a Podcast, and this is our first look at Ixalan.
Life didn't work so great. Tried to play dredge, it's a jailer hate. Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Your core trapped in amber stasis state. Lost a lot of friends, got left behind. Had to find a way not to lose my mind. Trapped in a vault with nothing but time. Parents and my friends were the key to find. Magic gave me purpose and drive. The game, the love, it kept me alive. Visions of better weather, light